The moment I projected his dating profile algorithm onto the conference room screen, 12 women gasped in unison. There it was. Mathematical proof that my ex-boyfriend had been methodically targeting women with specific psychological vulnerabilities for over 3 years. Not just any women. Women exactly like me. Women who were successful in their careers but harbored deep-seated insecurities about their personal lives. Women who responded to very specific compliments and communication patterns. Women who would fall for the same calculated approach that had worked on me. "This can't be real," whispered Melissa, the third woman in his pattern who had joined our impromptu support group. "You're saying he actually used data science to manipulate us?" I nodded slowly, my laser pointer circling the correlation metrics on the screen. Every conversation, every spontaneous date idea, every seemingly heartfelt message, it was all part of a templated approach. He's been A/B testing relationship strategies on at least a dozen women simultaneously. And that's when I showed them the most disturbing discovery of all. The spreadsheet where he'd been tracking and rating each of our emotional responses. The room fell completely silent. But let me back up and tell you how I uncovered this whole disturbing operation. Because the story of how I went from heartbroken data scientist to digital relationship detective is one that might just save someone else from the same psychological manipulation. My name is Emma. I'm 27. And I use machine learning algorithms to predict consumer behavior for a major tech company in Seattle. Never in my wildest dreams did I think I'd be using those same skills to expose a dating predator. But here we are. It all started 6 months ago, when Jake suddenly ended our relationship after almost a year together. The breakup came out of nowhere. At least that's what I thought at the time. One day we were planning a weekend getaway, and the next he was telling me how he needed space and wasn't ready for something so serious. The typical breakup story, right? Nothing special. Nothing that would warrant a deep forensic investigation. Except for one small detail that kept nagging at me. The night before he broke up with me, I accidentally saw a notification on his phone while he was in the shower. It was from a dating app. An app he shouldn't have even had installed if we were in an exclusive relationship. The notification contained a username I didn't recognize and a message preview that simply read, "Phase 1 complete for Subject 7. At the time, I brushed it off. Maybe it was a game notification? Maybe it was from before we started dating and the app was just sending a random reminder. I didn't confront him about it because, honestly, I trusted him. That trust was shattered the very next day when he ended things. After 2 weeks of crying and processing the breakup like any normal person would, something clicked in my analyst brain. Phase 1 complete for Subject 7. That didn't sound like a typical dating app message. That sounded like data collection. As a data scientist, I recognize research terminology when I see it. And that message had all the hallmarks of someone running some kind of experiment. But what kind of experiment involves dating apps and numbered subjects? That's when my professional curiosity kicked in. I decided to create a fake profile on the same dating app where I'd seen the notification. My goal was simple. I wanted to see if Jake was active on the platform and what kind of profile he was running. What I found was much worse than I expected. Not only was Jake active, but he had a premium profile with professional photos I'd never seen before. His bio was meticulously crafted to appeal to a very specific type of woman. Successful, independent, but with subtle hints of insecurity. The kind of woman who would respond to validation about her accomplishments while secretly craving emotional connection. Women like me. But here's where it gets really interesting. I'm a data scientist, remember? I know how to scrape data and analyze patterns. So I created several different profiles, each with slightly different characteristics, and used them to interact with Jake's profile in various ways. But wait, you might be thinking, wouldn't he recognize you from your photos? That's where my friend Liza from the computer graphics department came in. She helped me create realistic AI-generated photos of women who looked somewhat similar to me, but were definitely not me. Ethically questionable? Maybe. But I was starting to suspect something much more unethical was happening on Jake's end. Through these various profiles, I started different conversations with Jake, and that's when the patterns emerged. He used almost identical opening lines for similar profile types. His response times followed a calculated pattern. His questions followed a specific sequence designed to extract key information about a woman's relationship history, insecurities, and attachment style. I was mapping out his entire approach when I received an unexpected message on my real social media account. It was from a woman named Tara. "Is this Emma who dated Jake Miller for about a year?" My heart skipped a beat as I confirmed. "I think we need to talk. I just broke up with him, and I found some disturbing things on his laptop." We met at a quiet cafe the next day. Tara was also a tech professional, a UX designer who had dated Jake for about 3 months after me. She explained that during their relationship, she had borrowed his laptop for work when hers crashed. She accidentally discovered a folder labeled Dating Market Research while looking for her design files. "At first, I thought it was for some kind of marketing job," Tara explained, her hands shaking slightly as she pulled out her phone. "But then I saw the spreadsheets with our names." She showed me screenshots she'd taken. There it was, a massive data operation tracking conversations, dates, emotional responses, and conversion rates with multiple women. My name was there, Tara's name was there, and at least 10 other women, each assigned a subject number. "I confronted him about it," Tara continued. "He claimed it was for a psychology paper he was working on. But when I pressed him for details about which university was sponsoring this research, he got defensive and broke up with me the next day. The pieces were starting to come together, but I needed more data. That's when I had an idea that would either confirm my suspicions or put them to rest. I asked Tara if she would be willing to connect me with any other women on that list she might be able to find. Within a week, we had located 3 more women who had dated Jake. One was still dating him. We created a secure messaging group and began sharing our experiences. The similarities were uncanny. Jake had approached each of us in nearly identical ways, tailored slightly based on our individual profiles. He had taken us on the same spontaneous dates. He had sent messages with the same emotional beats at the same points in the relationship timeline. But you're not going to believe what happened next. Melissa, the woman who was still dating him, agreed to help us gather more information. She accidentally left her laptop open with our group chat visible when Jake came over. As we'd suspected, he immediately became interested in what we were discussing. When Melissa returned to the room, she caught him scrolling through our messages. Rather than confronting him immediately, she pretended not to notice, and later reported back to us that he seemed agitated and kept checking his phone for the rest of the evening. The next day, all of our dating profiles received messages from new accounts that used the same linguistic patterns as Jake, but with different photos. He was trying to figure out how much we knew. That's when I decided to take things to the next level. If he was running a systematic approach to dating based on data, I could use my own skills to reverse engineer his entire operation. I spent the next 2 weeks building a machine learning model to analyze all of our conversations with Jake. I gathered message timestamps, linguistic patterns, emotional response tracking, and date sequencing. What emerged was nothing short of a scientific approach to romantic manipulation. Jake wasn't just a player dating multiple women. He was running a sophisticated system designed to optimize emotional attachment while minimizing his own investment. He had identified psychological triggers that worked across different personality types and had refined his approach based on successful and failed interactions. The model revealed that he would typically exit relationships at predictable points, usually when a woman began seeking deeper emotional commitment or when he'd gathered enough data on a particular subject type. But the most disturbing discovery was that he was sharing his research with others. There were references in his messages to a private forum where men exchanged similar strategies and data. This wasn't just one manipulative ex-boyfriend. This was potentially a network of men treating relationships like psychological experiments. Armed with this information, we had to decide what to do next. Should we confront him? Report him to the dating apps? Go public with our findings? We chose to do something that aligned with my analytical nature. We decided to host what we called a data reveal session and invite every woman we could identify from his spreadsheets. It took almost a month to track everyone down. Some were hesitant to attend, believing they had experienced a genuine relationship rather than a calculated experiment. Others were immediately on board, having sensed something was off, but never being able to pinpoint exactly what. And that brings us back to the conference room where I began this story. 12 women ranging in age from 25 to 33, all successful in their fields, all with similar psychological profiles according to Jake's data, all manipulated by the same man using the same techniques. As I walked them through the evidence, the message patterns, the date sequences, the emotional trigger points, I could see the realization dawning on their faces. What they had thought was a unique connection had been a carefully engineered experience designed to create maximum emotional dependency with minimal effort on his part. "So what do we do with this information?" asked Rachel, a software engineer who had dated Jake for 2 months. "Do we confront him?" "I don't think confrontation is the goal here," I replied. "I think awareness is. Now that we understand how these manipulation techniques work, we're less vulnerable to them, not just from Jake, but from anyone using similar approaches." But Sarah, a marketing executive who had been with Jake the longest at nearly 2 years, wasn't satisfied with just awareness. "He needs to be exposed," she said firmly. "What he's doing isn't just unethical from a research standpoint, it's emotional abuse." We debated our options for hours. Some wanted to report him to the dating platforms. Others wanted to contact the tech company where he worked. A few even suggested legal action, though we weren't sure what laws had actually been broken. In the end, we decided on an approach that would use Jake's own methods against him. Using our combined expertise in technology, psychology, and communication, we created what we called the Transparency Project. We built a secure website documenting the techniques we had identified, not just from Jake, but from the forum he participated in. We anonymized all personal details, but provided clear examples of how these manipulation strategies worked. Then came the clever part. We used the same targeting algorithms Jake had developed to identify potential victims of similar schemes and created educational content specifically designed to reach them through social media and dating platforms. We were turning his weapons against the entire network, but that wasn't the end of our story. You're probably wondering what happened when Jake realized he'd been exposed, right? 3 days after launching the Transparency Project, I received a message request on social media from an account I didn't recognize. It was Jake, writing from a new profile. "I know what you're doing," he wrote. "You're misrepresenting legitimate social research as something sinister. I could sue you for defamation." I had anticipated this response. In fact, I had run a predictive model that gave an 83% probability that he would attempt to frame his actions as legitimate research if confronted. "We haven't named you publicly," I responded truthfully, "but we have documented your methodologies with significant evidence. If you pursue legal action, all of that evidence becomes part of the public record. Is that what you want?" He didn't respond immediately. According to my message timestamps, he typed and deleted several responses over the next 20 minutes before finally sending, "What do you want from me?" "Accountability," I wrote back. "Acknowledge to every woman on that spreadsheet what you were doing, and share the details of the forum where you've been exchanging this information." What happened next surprised even my data-driven mind. Jake agreed to a monitored video call with all 12 women present. Maybe he thought he could charm his way out of the situation. Maybe he genuinely felt remorse when confronted with the collective impact of his actions. Or maybe he was just cutting his losses and trying to prevent wider exposure. During that call, Jake confirmed everything we had suspected and more. The forum had over 3,000 members worldwide, all sharing techniques for what they called optimized dating strategies. Many were men with backgrounds in psychology, marketing, or data science who applied their professional skills to their personal relationships. "You have to understand," Jake explained, his usual confidence notably absent. "It started as a genuine attempt to improve my dating life after a series of rejections. But the more data I collected, the more it became addictive. Seeing patterns emerge, testing hypotheses, optimizing approaches, it felt like solving a complex puzzle." "We weren't puzzles to be solved," Tara interrupted. "We were people with real feelings who thought we were in real relationships." Jake had the decency to look ashamed. "I know that now. Somewhere along the way, I stopped seeing the human impact. The data became more real than the relationships. As a data scientist, I could almost understand the intellectual fascination with patterns and optimization. But as a woman who had genuinely fallen for someone who saw her as merely Subject 7, I felt violated in a way that was hard to articulate." By the end of the call, Jake had provided us with access to the forum and agreed to post a full admission of his actions there, not naming us, but clearly stating that his research had caused real harm to real people. The forum imploded within days. Some members doubled down, defending their approaches as no different from the optimization algorithms used by the dating platforms themselves. Others expressed genuine remorse, claiming they had never considered the ethical implications of their methods. Many simply deleted their accounts and disappeared. Meanwhile, the Transparency Project gained traction. We were featured in several tech publications and eventually caught the attention of mainstream media. Dating platforms reached out to us for consultation on how to identify and prevent these types of manipulative patterns on their services. What started as a personal investigation into one man's unusual breakup behavior had evolved into a movement for greater transparency and ethics in digital dating. As for me, the experience transformed my relationship with my own work. I had always seen data science as a neutral tool that could be used for positive outcomes in business and technology. Now I understood how the same methodologies could be weaponized in personal relationships. I began advocating for stronger ethical frameworks in data science education and practice. I developed workshops for women in tech to recognize data-driven manipulation tactics, not just in dating, but in all aspects of life. And something unexpected happened along the way. The 12 of us, the women who had been subjects in Jake's experiment, formed genuine bonds through our shared experience. We became friends, confidants, and eventually, collaborators on projects extending beyond the Transparency Project. It's been a year since that first meeting in the conference room. The Transparency Project has now documented over 50 distinct manipulation strategies used across dating platforms, reaching thousands of people with educational content designed to build resilience against these techniques. Jake, from what we've heard through mutual connections, has left the tech industry entirely and moved to another state. The forum where he shared his research no longer exists, though we have no doubt similar communities have formed elsewhere. As for me, I'm still single, but I approach dating with much clearer eyes. I've even started seeing someone recently, a person I met through a professional conference, not a dating app. The irony isn't lost on me that I now mentally check for the patterns we identified in the Transparency Project whenever we interact. But that's the reality of dating in the age of algorithms. Once you've seen behind the curtain, you can't unsee the machinery at work, not just in the platforms themselves, but in how people have adapted their behavior to those platforms. The question I'm left with, and the one I pose to anyone reading this, is whether greater awareness of these patterns makes us more protected or more paranoid. Does understanding the potential for manipulation make genuine connection more difficult? I don't have a data-driven answer for that yet. Some things, it turns out, still defy algorithmic prediction. Would you do what we did in my situation? Was exposing the entire network taking things too far, or not far enough? What I do know is this: by turning our collective heartbreak into a force for transparency, we reclaimed our narrative. We transformed from unwitting subjects in someone else's experiment to authors of our own story. And if you're reading this because you suspect you might be experiencing something similar, remember, patterns don't lie. Trust your instincts. Compare notes with others. And know that you're not alone in navigating this new landscape where love and algorithms intersect in ways both fascinating and frightening. Because in the end, the most powerful algorithm is awareness itself. Wait, I haven't told you the most shocking part yet. 6 months into the Transparency Project, we received an anonymous message with a link to a private cloud storage folder. Inside was evidence that these dating optimization techniques weren't just being developed by individual users. There were indications that at least one major dating platform was studying these manipulation patterns to improve their own matching algorithms. We're still investigating these claims, gathering more data before we go public with this next phase of our findings. But it raises disturbing questions about the ethics of the platforms themselves. Are they unwitting hosts to these manipulation strategies, or are they learning from them? For now, I'll leave you with this thought. In a world where our most intimate connections are increasingly mediated by algorithms, who is really in control? The platforms? The users who game the system? Or can we reclaim agency through collective awareness and action? I believe in the latter. Because if my experience has taught me anything, it's that even the most sophisticated algorithm can't account for what happens when people come together and compare notes. So keep your eyes open, notice the patterns, share your experiences, and remember that behind every profile, every carefully crafted message, and every dating strategy, there are real human beings with real emotions, including you. The code can be reverse engineered. The heart doesn't have to be.